Hello guys, and welcome back to Joe's Ventures. And today we're going to be doing part 8 of our Jurassic World Evolution 2 Accurate Dinosaur Mod Spotlights, where we take a look at a bunch of different mods people have been making and compare them to their real-life fossil counterparts. So today we've mainly got mostly from one pack of animals, the small carnivores, kind of paleo edits by Furlong, but we've got a couple little extras put in with our last animal, as you could probably guess from the thumbnail, something very special. So we're going to be starting off with our first little carnivore with Compsognathus by Furlong. We'll also have a little look at this, see how really cool that is. These are some of the changes to our little men's here. Little compy. I'll grab this one since it's all easier to see him than through the grass. So we'll get a little thicker from here. Look at that, isn't he wonderful? So we can see some of the changes to here. You can see Compsognathus is very vaguely bird-like. You can see almost that long neck that a bird has under its feathers. You can see its face. It's not quite as pointy as the one already in game, but you can see it there. Longer neck. You can see the hips also being changed because they've got that kind of dinosaur condition, or the lizard-hipped dinosaurs with a big pubic boot there. We can see all the different models as it changes here. Longer tail, I think, by the look of it. So this is a generally pretty good one. It's the original Jurassic Park one was pretty spot on, other than some minor changes. But the main issue is that we know from close relatives of Compsognathus, such as Sinorthosaurus, I believe. I keep getting the Sinorthosaurus and Sinorthochlorix confused just because they've got similar names. But a lot of these guys, closer relatives, the other Celophysids, we have evidence of them with full-on feathers. So like a fluffy down. So we kind of know generally what that's like. And there actually may be some evidence that some Celophysids, this is a pretty recent paper, it came out like late last year, that some of these Celophysids, including that one from Italy, Spinochlorix, I believe that's how you pronounce its name, is actually potentially a juvenile form of other larger dinosaurs. In particular, for that species, or that genera, it would have been something like a Carcharodontosaur. But yeah, very interesting in terms of paleontology. And another thing is that this creature, along with Archaeopteryx, was very instrumental in connecting birds to dinosaurs and involving how birds, especially in the early days of paleontology with people like Richard Owen, people like that were really starting to try and understand, Thomas Huxley, Charles Darwin, they would try to understand where birds came from. And they found that these dinosaurs, like Archaeopteryx, had a lot of very similar features to each other. So that was kind of one of those big hypotheses. And then as time went on, it kind of proved that, yeah, they were right. Birds are most definitely dinosaurs, and most of the scientific consensus agrees with that. So really cute little model. We'll have a look at, see if you find any of the other little guys here. So you can see the longer tail here. Just missing that full coat of feathers, but we saw from the last episode with the woolly Pachyrhinosaurus, I think we can get like a feathered pack. I'd love to see a feathered pack from Digital Duck again. I think that'd be really awesome. So let's let these little guys run off and do their thing. So the next one is another one by Furlong. All of these four are done by Furlong, and then we'll have an intermission with a marine animal we'll have a look at. So we're having a look now at Celophysis. So let's see if we can get one. Looking sideways. Let's see. Here's one that looks nice. I really like these colors, and I like the mixed patterns. It allows you to really mix things up. We'll have a look at this one since he's quite nice in the light. So you can see a lot of the changes here. I think you see some changes to the arms, and you got the hylux there. So little pinky toe, pretty much. I think the tail's been elongated, and the general of the body just looks much leaner because there's kind of these two morphs, similar to Tyrannosaurus. These are like these two morphs of Celophysis, kind of this thick, robust morph, and like this gracile, lean, mean morph. And I like how that's rolled off the tongue. But we can see this one's kind of looks like it's more based off the more robust morph. And we can see some of the changes. He's got a bit of a tummy tuck, and also you can see more of that pubic boot there. Since these guys are very, very early theropods, I think it's a very characteristic feature of a lot of theropods until the bird line where they started to lose it. Then we can see little changes around the back here. It looks really, really interesting. We can see some changes to the arms. I think the fingers have been shrunk, and the obviously you can see by the deformation the arms have probably been slimmed up a bit to better represent the animal. And then we can see this long, long neck. Celophysis is quite characteristic for this quite long neck. And then we can see it's quite pointy face. Since these guys weren't kind of the top predators, there wasn't like Tyrannosaurus, like top dinosaurian predators in the Jurassic that were related to them. These guys were mainly things like Rarasuchians, and crocodiles like that. They weren't the top predator. These guys were kind of mid-tier predators. But dinosaurs still had a strong foothold. They had the Celophysis, they had the early prosauropods that were moving on until the end of the Jurassic, and these guys were the guys that moved on into the Jurassic and became all the dinosaurs that we know and love. But in the Jurassic, this is where they were just getting their start. And the Jurassic is a very underrated time in geologic time because it's just full of so many weird and wacky animals. There's so many weird archosaurs like Dismatosuchus, and there's Postosuchus, and Placerius and Laguardia, like the elephant-sized diatodont. It's a very, very interesting time in our prehistory. And Smock as well, that lived with Laguardia. It's like this huge, potentially like 10-meter long, pretty much T-Rex before T-Rex. It's a very, very interesting time, and these guys would have been amongst it. And their remains have been found because at the time the world was all connected in the supercontinent Pangaea, so remains of these guys have been found in America and Africa and pretty much areas all across the world because they were just able to pretty much walk anywhere they liked. So yeah, a really, really cool paleo edit. I think these guys came out very, very well. So we're going to let these guys walk off and do their thing. A little bunch of them out. Look at all the different colors. I think it came out really, really well. Let's just make sure they all get away from our thing here. So next we're going to have a look at Proceratosaurus. Despite its rather confusing name, we'll have a look at this one over here since he's moving and having a roar. We'll have a look there. Considering its name Proceratosaurus, it was initially believed to be a ceratosaur, but later it was actually found this was a very early relative of something like Tyrannosaurus. This is an early tyrannosaur and related to animals like Wanlong and animals like that. Really, really interesting to see how things like that change. It was obviously assumed because of the crest, but you can see the 3 fingers here. This was before tyrannosaurs lost that condition of 3 fingers. And before they moved to 2, and we can see all the different changes here. This one's also pretty minor, similar to the Celophysis. I think the main changes are really around the face and the crest. A lot more elongated. Very similar in ways to like Dilong, which you guys have probably seen. Very, very close relative. They have this kind of very interesting crest on their face. Remember, this was before these guys really became the big predators like Tyrannosaurs did. This was kind of when they have to live with things like Allosaurus and Yangtzingosaurus, those like early Megaraptorids, not Megaraptorids, Megalosaurs and Allosaurs, before they became the Tyrannosaurs and Gerontosaurs eventually. That took over during the Cretaceous, and the Tyrannosaurs as well, which obviously at the very end became the big bads. We all love Tyrannosaurus, don't we? And then we can see a lot of the changes here. I think the hands, now we can probably see the hands that are pronated, so they clap, 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 they're not pronated, they have the clap position. I think he's got a bit of a neck tuck, not quite as chubby, a little bit of a tummy tuck, also the boot that I mentioned a couple of times. And I think the tail's been elongated a little bit. The legs have definitely been thinned out, because dinosaurs, I think often people, when they reconstruct dinosaurs, they make their legs far too thick. But we know from a lot of birds that most of the muscle on their legs is mainly around here. So this is basically all tendon. So really their legs would have been quite skinny. And he's got appropriately sized feet. A little bit weird how his toes go in there. But we can see the 3 fingers there. Really, really came out nicely, I think. Nice to see in the light, and we can see all the wonderful different colors. We can see this nice one here. Oh, really, really beautiful, actually. I like this random mixing. And then we can see another one here. And this crest was most likely potentially used for display. I personally think display is a very, very underrated thing in, especially sexual display, because if you look at animals like peacocks or Andean cock of the rocks, they have such weird colors and structures that actually impede their survival, but that just shows how strong sexual selection is, and I think a lot of people underrate that. Just because, like, obviously, if you don't get to breed, you're not passing your genes. You can be the best survivor, but if you don't get to pass on your genes, you basically lose in the evolutionary game. So I think people really do underrate sexual selection, and that's why a lot of these weird structures have evolved time and time again in birds, dinosaurs, mammals, pretty much every animal under the sun. So I think that's very, very interesting how animals will move just to get a lady or get a mate. So very interesting. And while we wait for these guys to move, we've got a nice one by Furlong as well. So we have got everyone's favorite other Jurassic big bad carnivore. We have got Herrerasaurus. Of course he gets in the way. I think we'll wait for them to get to a nice sunny place. Kind of just ran out on me. Let's look at this one while he's hanging about. We're getting a bit swarmed with dinosaurs at the moment, but we can see here. Let me get out of that mode. See some of the changes. You can see a lot of the changes to the face. Herrerasaurus is very, very like weirdly shaped skull. We have some remains of the skull from some adults. Most of them are juveniles, but they've got this really funky looking boxy skull that you can see here. Really fits them well. They almost look like a JWE2, but obviously they're not closely related to Velociraptor at all. And then we can see some of the changes here. A lot of thinner neck, I mean. Bigger pubic boot and all that. These guys were a very, very early offshoot of the dinosaurs. They're not even really considered theropods. They're either considered like closely related to other saurischians, so like sauropods and theropods. These guys are very, very early, and even though they're very, very early, they're still very, very large. They get about 5 to 6 meters, I believe, and we can see the hands are obviously quite wrong. He's got almost like knuckle bearing them. They would have been not pronated, more like these guys here. But yeah, that's just part of the rig, and then we see some changes to the legs. This one, from the get-go, was actually pretty good, but we can see some of the main minor changes to the skull. Herrerasaurus is a very, very interesting-looking animal, if you do say so myself. I like this color here. It reminds me of like all those old dinosaur toys. It's a simple color, but I like this one the most, I think. Like the yellow and brown, I think that goes quite well together. And we can see some of the changes to the skull here. Very, very interesting and very characteristic looking skull. So I think it's a really cool. So yeah, we'll move on. So all these 4 theropods are made by Furlong, and we'll be moving on. As a bit of an interlude, we're going to be moving on to our little aquarium here, a lagoon, and we'll be having a look at the Mosasaurus accuracy edit. So we've got a lot of edits here, but we're going to get to something really cool at the end. This one was made by Droid Commander 2712. Make sure I got that right. And Lego Craft Boy. I believe that's how it's said. So, yeah, let's move on to have a look at the Mosasaurus. So let's release. So let's have a look at you. Let's get you in the light. Oh, that's my window closing. So we'll have a look at you now. Look how wonderful you are. So we can see some of the changes to the Mosasaur. As we can see here, it looks like he's very much not as spiky as a Jurassic World one. as we know that we have pretty good skin impressions from a lot of species of mosasaur, and it seems like most other marine reptiles and other lizards and like snakes and things, they had very, very small and smooth scales which helped them glide through the water. So it's very likely that if you looked at a mosasaur, a living mosasaur, and you looked at it like from its whole body, you wouldn't be able to notice the scales, and it would look rather smooth, just because being so large and keeping that smooth skin really helps them flow through the water, so they wouldn't have been as spiky or anything like that. Some changes to the face. I would recommend potentially changing some stuff because of the weird kind of lips here. We know from snakes and lizards that they most likely had lips, unless they did this weird thing and de-evolved them or lost them over time. But yeah, I really like this edit. We can see it's quite long and spindly, quite thick as well. Mosasaurus was a very, very big, bulky mosasaur. Something like Tylosaurus was a more lanky. And yeah, very interesting. We can see some of the flippers have changed as well. Not too much there, but I really want to highlight the tail here, since we know from remains, especially things like Platycarpus, where we have very, very good skin impressions, as I mentioned. We know that mosasaurs actually had a big tail fluke, very similar to something like a shark or a fish or a dolphin, similar to something like an ichthyosaur as well, where it would have been kind of like this. The positioning is wrong because you can't change the model really, or the rig at the moment. I think you can, but it's difficult. But it would have been come down like this and had a big fluke at the top. So this is pretty accurate to what if you just turned it down a bit, this would be pretty accurate to what a real life Mosasaurus tail looked like. So came out pretty well. Droid Commander and Lego Craft Boy, you both did very good job with this, and I'm excited to see more edits from you and some more edits of the Mosasaur, because I feel like there'll be a lot of those coming. Very, very interesting. So let's let you walk off and do your thing. So now we're going to be moving on back to some of the full-on edits. So we've got some of the more obvious ones and some of the cooler animals. So we have got Troodon. So Troodon, as we know, a wounding tooth, which is technically not the correct name, since it's undiagnostic now, so it'd be Herrerasaurus, I believe we pronounce that. But anyway, we will have a look at these wonderful guys. We can see these guys got a pretty big edit. Let me just get out of here. We can see that the head has been a lot more thinned up and really fits what we know of the species. And we got the really thin neck as well, and I think the arms have changed. You can see the middle finger is the longest. They wouldn't necessarily be holding their claws clutched up like that, because as we know, Troodon had feathers, so this would have been supporting a wing with like primary feathers and all that, and that's what we know from Troodon. And then we can see a lot of the changes. I can see a lot of the changes to the body. We can see this is where they were starting to move into that condition of you can see the bird hipped. They were starting to move that way, but these guys still had it, so that's the pubic boot there. Starting to move that way. And then you can see the tails are kind of being shortened, and the long, thin legs here with the dew claw. Troodontids didn't really have a bigger dew claw or a third-digit claw as things like Velociraptor and Dienonychus, but they still had them regardless. And then we can see these really big eyes, which is believed to be because they lived in low light areas. They're potentially nocturnal, but we really can't tell that for sure because we can't see the sleeping patterns of long dead animals yet, at least. But still really came out wonderfully. And I just love this pattern here, I think, with the yellow and the blue and the dark blue, like almost like grayish here. I think they came out rather nice. And yeah, other than that, with the full feathers, would be perfect. Pretty much a perfect model, and I think it came out rather well. Like these long spindly legs here. Troodon is kind of really renowned for that. And also, we know there were some Troodons that lived in Alaska. I don't think they have a particular species name yet, but they were quite large, and there was also Labyrinatrix, which may have been lumped back into Troodon, quote-unquote. I'll just use Troodon since that's what everyone uses. Has been lumped back, so these guys could have got quite large. So very, very interesting group of animals here, and all sorts of different interesting colors as well. So we'll let them move on. So now we'll be moving on to the next big bad raptor. We've got Dienonychus. We'll have a look at you while you're walking out of there. I know this looks like a 1990s Deinonychus, but yeah, we can talk about a lot of the changes here. We can see the skull's definitely been changed. Not that big, fleshy comb that it had, but Deinonychus had a very interesting shape. It had like a in-between between the Velociraptor with that very, very long, slender snout and the kind of very, very big, boxy, almost Tyrannosaur-like snout of Utahraptor. These guys were kind of a mid-size. They got to about the size of a wolf. So quite big, 60, 70 kilos, something like that. Quite big animals and a couple meters long, like 2 or 3 meters long, I believe. We can see they kind of got a little more of a boxy skull, along with the slightly shorter neck and a little bit more powerful because they have a little bit more powerful bite. This definitely looks like your typical 1990s Deinonychus. And we can see there's changes to the body, much more rounded, and unlike the Troodons over here, these guys should have their hands. These guys are pronated with their claws coming up looking cool, but in reality they would be facing each other's palms, and they would have, and like I said, they would have had feathers. We know that from animals relatives of this guy that they most definitely had feathers. And then we can see the round body here, long tail that would have most likely had a tail fan as well. So this is basically looks like a plucked Deinonychus. And then we can see some changes to the legs and this wonderful big dew claw here. These guys also had a pretty big dew claw, which was used to dispatch prey. They would most likely either use them to climb onto prey and use raptor prey restraint, where they use their wings to kind of like keep themselves steady as they hang on to their prey, or they would have aimed for their jugular or windpipe with these claws to help them bleed out and obviously dispatch them quickly and with less risk of injury to the animal. So yeah, very, very nice one coming up. Another animal I'd love to see with the feather add-ons. That'd be very cool. So we'll let these guys move on now. And then we'll have a look at our wonderful other big bad, this almost like the third or second famous dinosaur after Tyrannosaurus. We have got Velociraptor. So as I mentioned, these guys have got pretty much all the same issues I mentioned before. Obviously the weird hand placement, but I really like how they got the tail. The longer tail I think really helps with the character of it, and we know that these guys had pretty long tails since these guys would have been quite fast. These guys were also nowhere near as big as they were in Jurassic Park. Velociraptor, I think the largest estimates put it about 15 to 20 kilos, so it's the size of a large ground bird like a turkey, which is still a pretty big animal, but obviously not the Jurassic Park kind of sizes. And it could still be quite painful. I'd rather fight a Velociraptor than like a swan or something. But yeah, really, really interesting edits here. We can see these massive dew claw here. Really, really accentuated. So probably looks bigger because in general Velociraptor was much smaller than things like Deinonychus. But it's just kind of been scaled up so it fits better. We see this quite long tail that they would have used for counterbalance as they ran around. You can see they're quite skinny, and you can see the big pubic boot there, especially obvious in animals like this, almost like a turkey body, and then you have the keel there on a bird, but it's nowhere near as obvious on something like this since they didn't fly. Also, as I mentioned, the arms are wrong. They should be clapping, like the Troodons. And then we can see the most major edit you can notice is the face here. So Velociraptor didn't have that big boxy face. It had this very, very long, rectangular face that would have been very helpful in digging into prey, and they didn't need those necessarily as strong bite forces as something like Dienonychus. So they would have potentially eaten a lot of small prey and potentially maybe eating things like Protoceratops if they did hunted packs, though we do not know for sure. But yeah, I think this is a very interesting edit. Another animal I would love to see feather edit of. It still came out nice regardless. So we'll let these guys walk off and do their thing. And very, very interestingly, I just want to get you guys walking away. We have got our first new species. Well, technically our second, but that was just turning the Megalodon into a new species. But we have got our first new species done by LA Studios. We have got Miragaia. So Miragaia, our wonderful big man here. We'll have a look at this one as he's walking out. This one, well, he's walking on the bushes. We'll look at the. Need one to look as a perfect example. It could be this one. So we've got this wonderful Miragaia. There we are. Perfect. Look at him now. So this is. As I mentioned, Miragaia. So this guy is named after Miragaia, which was a parish in Portugal, and the name of the geological unit of where it is found. This guy was very famous for being a long-necked stegosaur, so almost very vaguely sauropod-like. But it seems like with better remains of animals like Stegosaurus, this guy may not have been as weird as we first thought. But very interesting animal here. So this guy is mainly found from the Upper Jurassic from Portugal and like the Loharina Formation. So that would have lived with animals like Diherasaurus, Lucititan, Torvosaurus, Gurnii, animals like that. Very, very similar in terms of the Morrison Formation. We have animals like Brachiosaurus and Allosaurus and Torvosaurus as well. And then you have in Africa, you have animals like Giraffe Titan, Allosaurus as well. So quite similar species across the board. But these guys may have also lived in the Wyoming or the Morrison Formation. So if people sometimes consider that particular individual or those particular individuals as another genus of Alcovosaurus, but recently in 2019 they basically confirmed their validity of Miragaia longicolum, which is the species name for this guy, and they also renamed Alcovosaurus to the other species of Miragaia, Miragaia longispinus. So longicolum comes from Portugal, and longispinus comes from America or Wyoming. So they would have lived with animals such as Brachiosaurus, Stegosaurus, animals like that. Very, very interesting. So Miragaia was kind of that. They were quite large, still big animals, but kind of that upper end of the stegosaurs. So compared to animals like what's the how do you pronounce it? Dinoceles or something, and then Decentiurus. I believe that's pronounced it. Yes, Decentiurus, and other larger animals like Stegosaurus. These guys got between 5.5 and 6 meters long. So 18 to 20 feet, and they've often been estimated to be about 6.5 meters, like longest, and weigh about 2 tons. So still a quite big animal, size of a rhinoceros. And the holotype is actually, we've been able to find through histology that the holotype is in its early 20s, about 21 years old. So that's something very interesting. And they have very, very, very interesting diagnostic traits. You can see here they've got this long neck, as I mentioned. It's longer than any other stegosaur comparative to its body, but obviously it's not as weird as we first thought. And then we can see it's got this very, very interesting set of plates. So we can see these two rows of plates going down its side. It's very similar to something like Stegosaurus and its other close relatives, but they're all very, very tall, and it just gives this really interesting profile. And then it starts to kind of like convert down the bottom of the tail into thagomizers, which are big osteoderms that basically stick out, and they may have been used for defense or for sexual selection, as I mentioned. And it's very, very tall and long, and it obviously would have been very good for defending yourself. So these spines as well, and they kind of run all the way down the backs of the animal. Obviously, this very long neck as well. And we kind of know a lot from these guys. We're pretty good from their skeletons, and we know that they had a bunch of osteoderms and thagomizers and things. So in terms of who it's related to, as I mentioned, it's related to Dinosaurus. I believe I'm going to stick with that pronunciation. And Stegosauridae. It was kind of on that line to becoming Stegosaurus, and then also animals such as Herrerasaurus and Herrerasaurus, which obviously may be still Stegosaurus, but kind of one of those later stegosaurs, and kind of clades in the group Dinosauridae with Dinosaurus and Miragaia, kind of form that group. And then they are sister group to the Stegosauridae or Stegosauri. So that's related to animals such as Herrerasaurus and Stegosaurus, everyone's favorite Morris and Spiky Boy. So, yeah, this guy would have lived with all sorts of different cool animals, as I mentioned, Torvosaurus and things like that. And, yeah, it's estimated, or not estimated, it's guessed that these guys were kind of, had this long neck, was that they were more adapted for browsing. So they would be eating like the, kind of like the situation with the black rhino versus white rhino. These guys mostly had those longer necks to better help them browse. Very, very interesting animal as well, and overall a very good model. This was made by LA Studios, so they know how to make accurate. The only issue that really lays out to me is the feet, that I have to keep mentioning. All 5 digits should not be visible, only a few. Only a couple there, I think 2 or 3. And then a couple there. But other than that, it's basically perfect. And our first new species. So now that we don't have to replace anymore, and it actually took not too long to get new species working, since, as we obviously recall, it took quite a while to get new species for Jurassic World Evolution 1, and now we've got it within the dev cycle of Jurassic World Evolution 2 after the first DLC. So that's came out very, very well, and I can't wait to see more new species in the future. So I think we'll just let this guy have a little walk around. Very, very wonderful. I'm in love with this Miragaia model. Miragaia is one of my favorite stegosaurs. Just a very interesting animal, and I'm excited to see it in Prehistoric Kingdom as well. It's going to be very interesting. So yeah, I think this would be a very, very great place to end the video. So just to go over, most of the little dinosaurs are made by Furlong for a small carnivores edit. The Mosasaurus is made by Droid Commander 2712 and Lego Craft Boy. And Miragaia, new species, was made by LA Studios. So yeah, I think this would be a great place to end the video, as I mentioned. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you guys like and subscribe. Always remember to hit the little bell icon to get notified when I upload anything. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you guys like and subscribe. And bye-bye.